very warm welcome to everyone and good evening. I know this is the last session and everyone is itching to get up and go and for cocktails and dinners. But I am going to ensure that we have a very, very interesting discussion with a very interesting panel here. So a very warm welcome to all my panelists. So the role of CHRO, we've since morning, most of you who have been here have gone through, discussions that were led by leaders, CEOs, CHROs, and we are today at the end of the session. It's a great concluding session, I think, and we have a mix of a good panel where we have the CHRO and Kamini as a business head, and we're going to get some interesting views. So what we are going to delve upon is the power and responsibility of CHROs in unlocking human potential. And I would like to, go over to Sanjeeb to kind of share his experiences in terms of what challenges he has come across in his career as an HR person and now as a CHRO in terms of the D&I initiatives and aligning it to the overarching goals, strategic goals of the organization. Would like to hear from you, Sanjeeb.
First and foremost, thank you, IDC, for this opportunity. And I'm really thinking aloud that all of us are actually sitting between us and probably the bar and the food thereafter, right? So now the question that Tanu has asked, now honestly speaking, my journey has been in the talent space, and I'm sure all of us, all HR professionals over here, we deal with talent, right? Now when we deal with talent, do we keep our eyes open or we tend to play blind? What do we think? I for one tend to play blind, because for me really what matters is the talent. What is needed for the job, and if the person is doing it or not, is capable of doing it or not, right? After that, it becomes like it's a trial and error process, right? Because all in HR, whenever we have studied recruitment, we always heard that recruitment is a game of best fit. But, and why I keep myself, why I say that I tend to play blind, is because if I keep my eyes open, I see all these things coming up, community, gender, identities, where does the person stay, and blah, blah, blah. So, to answer your question, Tanu, yes, there are challenges every day, and I'm sure each one in this room will actually say that, ye nahi hota, wo nahi hota. Point is, as the decision maker on talent, or as the role of the CHRO that we all have, how do we really put in the context of business onto it? What does the business need and why does the business need it? Yeah, and if you're able to really put that and equate our talent story, maybe make our talent story around that, I am sure all of us will win our games. Now, how that story how you will actually weave that story is on to us. I know I have not given a straight answer. I have really given a very philosophical answer, but I really want each one of us to think that the story is about business. What is going to make the business successful, and how do we really have that particular, the capability of talent coming in? And I'm sure during our discussions we will unveil a lot of other aspects of the topic.
Yeah, thanks, Sanjeeb. So I understand, that you are saying that how do we create that business seed? So the role of the CHRO becomes important in terms of balancing the need of the organization and the need of the D&I space. So I would like to ask Kamini, who's the business head, how do you see that, Kamini, from a business perspective?
Yeah, so I think over the years, I think what we were talking about earlier as well, right? The way things have progressed over the years, like D&I has been something that we have been talking about over the last few years. And that is something that is coming up more and more. In fact, when you look at the people that we hire, the Gen Zs, so to speak, when we hire Gen Zs, right? These are some of the things that people are looking at. When they look at organizations, they are watching that, you know, what is the organization doing, what are their values, are they investing in, you know, social causes, you know, what is their stand on some of these things, on inclusion, on diversity. So that is something that's really, really important, and more and more now organizations are taking it really seriously now. It's no longer just a tick in the box activity, I would say, because I think some years ago, personally for me, I was really able to identify a lot with Deepika's story as well, because even for me, right from my childhood, my mother was always working, and in those days it was not very common for women to be working. So she used to work in the Indian Navy, and most of my friends did not have working mothers. So I've seen that kind of environment in my house, and that's how I've grown up, you know, watching that women are independent and they manage their own incomes. And I've always been very, very strong, feeling very strongly about, you know, gender equality, equity. That's something that is now changing over the last few years, right? It's no longer equality. You need to talk about equity as well. So it is something very, very close to my heart. And I'm not a CHRO. I'm not from the HR team. But yeah, I am leading one of the business units, which is the reinsurance operations. But I do take out time. A lot of people do ask me, you know, how do you manage to do all of these things? But I do take out time because it's very important for me. I feel it's important to have a voice. And when people look at leaders talking about these things, whether on social media, I do post a lot on social media as well. And they see that, right, that they understand that what is the, what should I say, DNA of the organization, how are the leaders actually looking at some of these things. So that makes a difference, and that kind of takes your organization brand ahead as well in some way. That may not be the intent, but that's the outcome, right? You do have that kind of impact on the brand as well. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Kamini. And I, you know, since hearing from morning the panels, I think that's what is coming out, that it's a balance that needs to be brought in not only by the HR, but the leaders and everybody in the organization. And from that, I would like to move to Kevin, who you know, would like to ask him how he is the CHRO for Shapoorji Pallonji Energy. So what are some of the initiatives and what are some of the challenges that you have seen in your role as a CHRO? You know, specifically from a perspective that are you, you know, from your responsibility and authority perspective, how have you driven the initiatives in the Shapoorji Pallonji's energy organization?
So my journey has been in this, especially if I talk about Shapoorji Pallonji experience, the way we have looked at diversity and inclusion, because we are into an industry, especially the energy vertical, which is into offshore oil and gas. So we are a project-based organization which work on, we primarily manufacture a floating refinery which purifies the raw crude into the purified crude. So this industry itself is a male-dominated industry. When I look at diversity as a topic, so my thoughts are slightly different from what has been talked so far. The way I look at it is, and since we are working with a global workforce, especially based out of Southeast Asia, majorly out of Southeast Asia, I look at diversity as a racial diversity. Diversity in terms of the nationalities. Diversity in terms of age, diversity in terms of religious diversity. Because when we talk from an Indian perspective, it is more towards gender diversity. Though gender diversity is also there, what we look at. But primarily, as of now, if I have to talk about, we are working with over 12 or 15 nationalities we are involved into. We are working with 5 different races, right from African to Europeans to Chinese to Malays to various others. As far as gender diversity is there, since this industry is male dominated, people have to go and work at the shipyards for manufacturing. What we have done is we have looked at, it was very challenging in the beginning because the leadership team or the people working at the project sites were not willing to accept the opposite gender as part of the team. So what we have done is we have identified certain roles where the gender diversity can be included, like the office-based role, the quantity surveys, the procurement team. There we have initiated, and it has to be pushed. What I feel is, and what I've seen is that anywhere you go, it is not possible to push any of the things without the idea being sold to your CEO or to the top leadership team. So we started with that. We managed with the stakeholders first. We convinced our top leadership that this is what is possible. And then off late, over a period of time, from probably 2% of gender diversity, we have reached up to a level of 27% to be precise as on date. So that is something what we have looked at. So that's something that I have faced as a challenge in terms and how I have overcome it. The other part is in terms of the racial diversity when I talk about, because when we opened up in Malaysia and Singapore, initially the people who were taking the leadership roles were from India. So the preference was always from an Indian candidate. That this is someone who is known to us, this is something we have worked upon, we have worked with him prior. So there again we have to push, we have to get the buy-in of that the talent is locally available. Why we have to look at migrating people from one location to another just to fill a position. When the talent is available, that's why we have opened up in those locations. So that's where we have looked at creating the policies around it. We have looked at convincing people. Stakeholder management was the key in terms of this. And at times, you have to use your influence and you have to use your authority. Many a times, I have to put my foot down to get onto that particular level, so that nothing is overstepped and the flavor or the racial flavor is not included out there. The quality has to be maintained without compromising on quality, and that is something what has been pushed. So these are some of the thoughts.
Yeah, thank you, Sanjeev. In fact, before the in the lounge when we were having this discussion on specifically from the Pallonji energy perspective, they have a very small setup in India. They are more globally present, and that's where he brought in this perspective of religious diversity. So we have been talking more around gender diversity, even racial diversity, LGBTQI, and we talked about disability. But I thought he brings a very interesting perspective of looking at religious diversity and how has he managed to kind of, bring that kind of diversity. In a way, I also kind of told him that, getting locally hired people, actually saving costs, that is adding to the benefit of getting a diverse set of population. So it makes the job easier sometimes, for the CHRO. Yeah. That's great, Sanjeev. Thank you. Sorry, Kevin. Kevin. I would also, invite Danish to help us understand, Danish, what have you seen as, as a role of a CHRO in pursuing or implementing DE&I initiatives, more from a perspective of, we say that what gets measured gets done. But are we really talking about measurement in, implementing DE&I initiatives? What does that mean? And what does that mean for your organization?
So that statement is very loaded. Okay, I'll break it down into a couple of parts. The first part is what have I seen in the industry is that the business now looks at sustainability, right? As we define it as ESG. Mm-hmm. And inclusion is no longer an option. It's part of your S in ESG. And a lot of organizations now prefer to work with organizations or suppliers who are ESG compliant. And that was one great beginning point for me. So in one of my previous roles where I was consulting with one of the largest steel manufacturers in the country, wherein they wanted to hire transgenders in the organization because their competitor had it, so they had that FOMO that, I need to have transgenders in the organization. And B, they also saw it as a business need that now if I have to supply steel across the globe, people will want to work with me only if I am compliant to the DEI policies and to ISO 45001, etc. So starting from there, the business need got created, and thereby we looked at that framework to measure as to where do we stay as of today. So you have multiple frameworks. You have the global DEI standards, you have the Stonewall measurement tool, you have the ISO tool. So we looked at all of them. We saw where does the organization stand, where does the organization stand versus its counterparts around the globe. And once we saw where we lied in that scatter plot, we identified what is it that we needed to do. And if I contrast that with my current organization, where I look after Center of Excellence as a vertical within HR. Now, DEI is at a very nascent stage. However, the organization is very, very number focused, very results oriented. And the only way to get things done is to create a metric around it. So what we've done is to measure DEI, we've created something called as a diversity index. Now, as part of that index, we have two things. One is your impact measures, which will be in terms of the engagement scores, which will be in terms of the percentage of diversity of different genres. You will have the engagement scores of these diverse populations, so on and so forth. At the same time, we also include the process measures to see whether you have at least one woman on the panel, how many times in the year has audits been done, how many women candidates have been hired through the process, what has their candidate feedback been like, so on and so forth. So if you look at both process and impact and you create a metric around it and you take that in your company balance scorecard, chances are that the organization will take it a little more seriously. So that is one way to look at it, if I have answered your question.
So how do you, just to add on to it, how do you, qualify the numbers? So if you can just, for everyone's sake, talk about how do you measure the impact?
So the impact is the end outcome that you are looking at, right? It could be, say, I want to have that many people from different diversities. That could be one measure in terms of the impact. The other impact is how many of those are at the leadership level. Now, it's very easy to hire someone as a fresher. You are increasing your diversity, but it's important to get those people a voice as well. If you have representation of your diversity at the top, then the organization knows that you mean business. So as part of our talent acquisition index also, we have included percentage of women and as a lead measure in the talent acquisition index that we have. And until and unless we hire women candidates, we don't get those numbers. So it creates that kind of seriousness around it.
So Sanjeeb, over to you from from what Danish has mentioned. How do you measure in your organization?
Well, pretty much similar, and I completely agree with Danish what he just said, because doing business across the world, and I represent manufacturing, more precisely the sustainability stroke recycling sector. So my organization, GRP Limited, is proudly one of the largest sustainability materials manufacturer and solutions provider on the planet today. And proudly, we are celebrating our golden jubilee at this stage. 6 years ago, I will tell you, the gender ratio, and only male-female, was about 1.87, right? Today, we are at 12. However, understand, a manufacturing organization, recycling space, dealing with rubber, plastic, end-of-life products, it's not easy. And also, the manufacturing units are in the hinterland, deep within the states. Even if I wish to have women colleagues up there, the society will not allow, does not allow, right? At times we have had people that we can own, the women must have a male member from the family who is be working in the same plant for them to be allowed to come to work. So that's what we have dealt with, right? Now, similar kind of measures, as our business is primarily export oriented, a major part of the business lies in the Europe and Americas. We have to comply to all the matrices, the ESGs, the GRSs, and so on and so forth, right? Now, how do we do that? Metrics at every level, but then how do we create the metrics? The first thing that if I go to a business leader, just only 1 minute, yeah, is that I need my people, ye to nahi ho payega. It's not possible, and it is really hard to do. So what do? Create roles where I can really have the people who I want who can work comfortably. So first we did that. Next step what we did is that tried to put in the basically a very simple metrics of how many applications from the targeted groups that I am seeing. And once again, it is not only male, female, it is about the demographic diversity, the type of people who are coming, where are they coming from, which communities are they coming from, what are their qualification profiles, are they coming from the same colleges, or are they coming from the same communities, are they coming from from similar religions, and so on and so forth. So had to create that entire matrix, because now I have to also report what is my minority population in my population as a part of my ESG, and also if people have done EcoVadis, you know it is a part, it's a major metric in EcoVadis. So tracking that, creating targets, how much we can do, and thereafter actually showing how much the needle has moved year on year. So I had my earlier life has been into the IT telecom space. We used to do PCMM, so actually adopted some of those matrices to see how the processes have actually matured by showing them with numbers. But yeah, numbers speak and numbers don't lie. So big lifesaver, I'm sure, for all of us, particularly CHROs when you have to really drive a point. So
yeah, great.
I hope
Thanks.
I've
I
answered
think
you,
that
Tanu.
was quite informative. Also, so when numbers tell you good, it is good, right? But when numbers don't tell you good, how do you handle the skepticism or the criticism for that when it comes to you as a person responsible?
First and foremost, I will address the point of responsibility, and really I've been blessed because in my organization, the DI index is not my KPI. It's my company's KPI. It's my boss's KPI. So, so things get done. No, point is, as a CHRO, and we were discussing, in the lounge, that we are probably the greatest influencers that an organization can have, provided we are able to show them the mirror and also tell them the way. Which organization, which business leader will not want to be successful? Tell me that. I'm sure nobody. If you're able to really show that this is one of the ways that it can come, skepticism will definitely be there, right? However, can we really say that if we don't do, what is the value? Like, for example, if we do not qualify through our metrics or the compliances that we need to, or the certifications that we need to, the business will actually stop. I'm sure that is a good enough reason for people to fall on board and, accept, even it with a pinch of salt, and thereby start living with it.
So the topic today says power and responsibility. So with power comes responsibility.
Yes.
And the power comes from authority, right? So would like you to share, how do you, as a CHRO, and I know it's a very difficult, and a lot of CHROs and HR people are sitting here, how do you use your authority to influence your leaders, say CEOs and business leaders, to implement DE&I initiatives which you believe in? And I think I would like you to, any of the panel members to talk about it, because that's going to be which I feel is going to be a big takeaway for everyone. I want you to talk about your real experiences and real stories.
Okay, see, so personally, I will say, and I will just bear me for a couple of seconds. First thing is that I think as CHROs, or for that matter, not only CHROs, forget it, as people professionals, do we think we have the power? If we are convinced that we have the power, the wand is in our hand completely. And there we use, now how to use the power then becomes the question. But a lot of times, and why this question probably is coming, and a lot of forums I have the opportunity to talk, and I get to hear that we are not called on the table. I say, my friend, the seat is vacant, go and sit. Yeah. First thing is that. So therefore, feel the responsibility that we all have, right? I am sure why we are in an organization for a purpose, right? We understand people. And we therefore need to really understand the people for the business. The moment we are able to bridge that gap, I'm sure, okay, I mean, if I start telling stories, it's going to be really, I mean, we have eminent thought-provoking pointers that is coming from the rest of my panelists. But I will just probably end my answer to this saying that, guys, the day we are able to really come in to put those dots together and tell the businesses that this is what you may want to do because of XYZ. I'm repeating this again and again in my answers because DEI, otherwise it will continue to be like a good to do thing for the HR person to handle. We will get CVs, businesses will not select. As simple as that. We will have promotion recommendations, somebody else will be selected. What is the need? Let us get to the need. And therefore, make that need the business need and thereby coming in. And we don't need invitation cards to get onto the table. We are there. So, my friends.
Yeah, would any of you add? Yeah.
Certainly, I resonate with Sanjeeb, and my thoughts are also on the similar lines. It is basically nobody comes and tells you that it is your responsibility. You have to take the lead and you have to take the ownership of it, of driving this, not directly, but through your leadership team or through your CEO. Primarily because when we talk about the DEI indices and all, it is all pertaining to the organization, not for a particular department. So there you have to use your influence, you have to show the need, business need, why we need it and why we have to take it forward. When we talk about this in detail, the power when you have to exercise is something where you have to use your authority, and your authority comes from where? In terms of the processes, systems and policies, what you can formalize. That is one part of it. Second is your power and authority comes you being a major influencer within the organization. You have to use that. And in this, again, I'll come back to my point, what I was saying earlier, that stakeholder management is really the key, which either makes or breaks it. So you have to influence, you have to manage the stakeholders, convince them that you are not doing it for your function, you are doing it for the overall benefit of the organization. From there, you take it forward. So that's my take on it.
Thank you. Anything you want to add, Danish?
So I would just like to add that you are invited to the table when you demonstrate that kind of credibility in the organization as HR. You know, I am fortunate enough to belong to an organization that believes in OD, and co-creation is at the heart of it. At any given point in time, so we are a promoter-driven organization. So our MD himself comes forward and says, I want to do some OD around this. And that is very, very heartening to hear. And any work that comes in the DEI space always has OD at the heart of it. So you do a detailed diagnosis, you show the organization the mirror as to, you know, this is where you currently lie. And is this where you want to be, or is it that you want to go somewhere else? And the diagnosis is not done by you as HR, it is done by you in partnership with somebody from the organization. So the business drives it on their own. When you drive it with them, they own it, they take it forward. And that's what has helped us to, you know, reach where we are today.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think I would like to, you know, Kamini to share in terms of she as a business person, you know, what her organization and how has she taken those initiatives forward in her organization.
Yeah, so I think at Marsh McLennan, we definitely believe that leadership plays a very crucial role and critical role in fostering this whole environment, right? So I think 2 years back, we started on this journey where we formed this inclusion council, which is comprising of all the business leaders and the CEOs of the 2 entities that we have in India, along with the CHRO as well. And what we said is that this is not an HR initiative only. So there are 4 different colleague resource groups that got created as part of that council. And there are 4 different business leaders, including myself, who are actually running those colleague resource groups over and above our day jobs of managing and leading operations teams. So there is one for gender, there is one for multi-generation, there is one for people with disability, and the one that I am leading is for LGBTQI. So these are the 4 different colleague resource groups, and the members of these groups are people, colleagues from the organization who have volunteered to be part of this group. They are the ones who are actually getting together, every month, collaborating with each other, coming up with different ideas and initiatives as to what all can we do to actually give that strong message to the organization that we are very, very serious about this. So it's not just an activity that's happening somewhere on the sidelines, but there are business leaders who are running these initiatives. We actually did a Pride March inside our office last year for the first time. I was a bit skeptical initially because it was the first time we were doing it. I was not sure what would be the response, but there were so many colleagues who started joining us, even the ones who had not originally planned to join us, but while we were walking, there were so many colleagues started to join us. And our CEO of the India office was right there at the forefront with me, walking, holding placards, chanting slogans. So I think that's the message, the commitment that we show from a leadership perspective, that we are wanting to make a change. We are wanting to be at that, because we, like you said, right, we are at that stage where we can influence. If we are at that position, then we have the ability to influence, and if we are not there at the forefront, then it's probably not going to be adopted by the rest of the organization. For people with disability, we also did an audit, because I think that's one of the areas where you actually need to see whether your office space and premises are actually conducive for people with disability or not. So we did an audit, and it was good to know that out of the 22 disabilities, we are there for 12 of them. So we are able to hire people with 12 disabilities because we are able to manage that. For the rest, the work is still going on. So yeah, those are some of the things that we are doing. From a gender perspective, we also have a dedicated women leadership forum that I also chair. That's for all the India entities that we have in India. One of the things that we've come up there is a mentoring program called Sangini. So as you all would know, Sangini means a friend. So what we do is we try to map mentors and mentees from different business units and different business functions, so that the mentees can get more exposure. It's not that you are getting mapped to your same function or your same business line, but you get mapped to a different business line, so you get to understand something that's happening on the other side of the business as well, and you gain that exposure and understanding of what this organization is all about. So those are some of the things that we are doing at Marsh McLennan in India, and of course globally it's an 85,000 employee organization, and like Kavin was mentioning, right, there's a lot of focus in the global teams also about racial diversity, ethnicity. There's a Black History Month which is really celebrated because we are headquartered in New York. So those things, somewhere I feel sometimes they don't really apply that much to the India landscape. But yeah, from an India perspective, these are the 4 areas that we are really focusing on.
Great. Now let me, a kind of an offline question that I would like to ask you, but since here I'm asking you right away, that I have been asking Sanjeeb and Danish and Kevin, on how have they dealt with resistance from their leaders. It's the other way around. Have you ever faced resistance from the HR in doing?
I don't think I faced resistance. I I think it has to be a partnership, right? It has to be a partnership because I think one of the things that I'm really pushing the talent acquisition team now is to tie up with Pride Circle. So Pride Circle is an organization I think some of you may already know, right? So we want to tie up with them so that we can source resumes and profiles from them from the LGBTQ community, and that has been in the works for some time now. So you have challenges like that, right? Things don't go at the pace that you expect them to. Maybe I'm expecting things to go at a much faster pace. But yeah, there are those things that happen from time to time where you feel that you need that action to happen quickly enough, because if you've decided that this is what you want to do, this is your focus area. You know, all of us are also as business leaders, we are busy with our day jobs as well. But if we take out time to manage this important aspect of the organization, then we expect that same level of partnership and same level of agility from the HR teams as well, to take that forward and say, look, here you go, this is the you know, these are the profiles and these are the things that we need to take forward. And yeah, I think the other pieces, of course, which I'm sure everybody else will agree is the whole budgeting piece, right? You need to have enough budgets available to run some of these initiatives. So I think those are some of the areas where always it's a little bit of a struggle, but we'll get there.
Thank you for asking, you know, answering that question.
So
Kamini.
I have something to add here because,
Okay.
you know, in that steel industry that I worked in, we were planning to do a mass sensitization of the entire inhabitants of the township. Because if you're hiring transgenders, they're not just going to be working there, they're going to be staying in the township. So everybody in the township needs to be sensitized. So, you know, right from the mandir ka pujari to the people who serve food to everybody. You know, the kids over there need to be sensitized to the fact that you'll have people from, you know, a different community working with you. At the same time, make them feel at home. So we had planned something like a transgender fair, wherein we would sensitize like 1200 people at one go through fun, through games, through garba, etc., etc. And this was all in rural Gujarat. And when we shared this plan, you know, with the HR team there, the first call that I got at the end of the meeting was, "Bhai, I'm not comfortable." Okay, pehle mujhe sikhao, then you know, take it to the en masse. And you know, being from the LGBT community myself, it was very, very offensive at that moment when the person shared that. And the tone that he used. So I told him that, you know, this is something that, you know, I also have faced, you know, rising up the career. And they were like, "Aapko dekh ke aisa lagta nahi hai." You know, right from that level you had to start, you know, you have to create that kind of safe space.
Yeah.
And it's okay for them to be not comfortable.
Yeah.
You know, create that safe space for them to share their concerns, you clear their doubts offline. Chances are that they will, you know, absorb it faster.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think one of the things that we did some time back when we hired our first transgender colleague, and we realized that we didn't have this in place. You know, we had not sensitized our organization. So we quickly sprung into action, the CRG sprung into action, and then we created a deck and we said, first this team who's going to welcome this colleague needs to understand, you know, some of the appropriate, not appropriate kind of sentences or phrases, and how are we expecting managers and first line managers to deal with colleagues from this community. So that's something that we did across. So I think that's extremely important, because sometimes what happens, organizations get into this mode of targets and, you know, KPIs, and we need to hire people from X community and Y community. But the people back in the office are not ready to accept and embrace that, and that will ultimately lead to those people leaving, because they want to be able to actually be around people who look like them and speak like them as well, because if they are like the only ones in that team and others are not able to respond and react to them, they may probably not stick around.
A lot of organizations are performative that way.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's true, because it has to be a holistic approach when we are looking at inclusion. So, you know, your infrastructure, your culture, your leadership, your HR teams, everyone needs to be sensitized in terms of what are the requirements. So that goes without saying. It's like all eyes on us for good and bad, both reasons. So thank you, everyone. Thank you for the interesting discussion.
For being